This discussion about Star Trek needing to go away has been around the internet for a while and wondering if they need to take a break. And this is very reminiscent of what I saw back with Enterprise and Nemesis around that area as well. Now, it's not about taking a break so much as in burning out and things like that, and fans not really wanting to see something that's Star Trek. It's something else at this point. I think there was some legitimate concerns in 2005, and it had the creators involved and the creatives involved that were a problem. We do know that the creators involved at this point do need to go. It needs to be just launched out the door wholesale and needs to change. But personally, I don't think Star Trek as a brand needs a break. I think it needs a return to form, which we'll get into in just a moment. So let's talk about Star Trek. And under the Kurtzman era, do we need like this 5-year period of just rest to just let everybody's minds reset again? Or are we in a good spot where we could be primed for a perfect revival? Hit the like, subscribe button. Join us here as we talk about all things Star Trek. Everybody, this is my book, The Soul Catcher. If you like my thoughts on Star Trek and the like, this is where it all begins for my space exploration trilogy. You're going to love this. It feels a lot like you used to get in the 90s. This is excellent science fiction that each book has its own high science fiction concept, real heroism, good characters that you're going to be able to be attached to. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So grab this in the description below. It's a pre-order, and I appreciate you guys for doing so, making this a success so far. This is going to be a lot of fun when it comes out this summer. There's going to be one book a month. I've already scheduled them all out. I wrote them all last year, so they're all done and ready to go for you, and I appreciate everybody who reads. So that's in the description below, and thanks for being here, guys, as we check this out. So does Star Trek need a break? Yeah, I was watching the Tacky Impulse video yesterday about this, where he actually thinks it does, and he's saying the same thing about Star Wars too, but I think there's a difference between the two properties. Star Wars really has brand maxed as much as possible out there. It was everything in culture. Ever since Disney relaunched things with The Force Awakens, they've been going full tilt, like product upon product, t-shirts and candies and action figures and a theme park, a hotel that died, right? They've really thrown everything they possibly could against the wall to really brand max this. And there's so many Star Wars shows, I can't even name them all at this point that are going on. And I think every single one of them hurt the brand worse than the other. Now, Star Trek also did a few TV shows also, but that's about all the extent of it that's been going on in culture. If you think about things, the Abrams era was long gone even before Kurtzman took over in Discovery in 2016. Discovery was it for a while until they brought Picard, and those, we're getting 10 episodes a season for each of these, so it's really just one season of Star Trek coming out at a time, even though there's different names and different shows technically. So we really have 10 years of just one season a year, right? Is about what we've had. And that's not a lot. And there's not been a lot to latch on to. It's really, really bad. But it also didn't feel like Star Trek. It feels like somebody else did a fan fiction of Star Trek that really wasn't quite right. And I don't think fans are in a spot with this where they're like, okay, I'm burnt out on Star Trek. And I don't think we're in a spot where you can't find good ideas for Star Trek. I actually have given 2 pitches for Star Trek so far. I've done one for Star Trek United, which involves the temporal Cold War to erase the timeline and the like a few weeks ago. You guys might have enjoyed. And I did one actually for a series that moves forward in the timeline about 50 years after the Next Generation as well, which I did in a video earlier this week. So go watch those, and I think you'll see that science fiction can still happen, and it can still be very, very good for Star Trek. The Star Wars universe, I think that one is much more messed up in the fact that they have it's all around the Skywalker saga. They already did the sequel later, and where do you go from there? There's not really room in a Star Trek with the way it's all, or Star Wars with the way it's set up for a Next Generation sort of thing to happen another 30 years later and just pretend this stuff doesn't exist. I think you have a problem with that universe. Star Trek has done this historically. We've done different eras and different generations and the like. That's why it works. You can have a spaceship another 100 years later and it won't cause any problem whatsoever. In fact, it's probably going to be a little better because then you're not going to step on continuity's toes. And that's what I expect Star Trek to do, and that's what I think they do need to do. I think it can come back, and I think one show right now, if they just put one out that's good, will actually do very, very well. I don't think Star Trek needs a break because I think we all feel like we've been on a break from Star Trek, and I don't think it even goes back to just Discovery. If you look at the Kelvin universe, the J.J. Abrams trilogy of movies, those didn't feel like Star Trek either. They felt like a parody of Star Trek for modern mass audiences that was more like Michael Bay movies out there than it was anything Star Trek related. And so even dating back to 2009, that wasn't real Star Trek. So you got to go all the way back to 2005. And I think A lot of people tuned out who were real Star Trek fans over that. And if you reset things, and if you do what Gene Roddenberry actually intended, not in the diversity crap that they're talking about, that's BS that they're making up and modernizing things, but in the fact that Gene Roddenberry really wanted real science fiction out of this stuff, if you look at what he pushed in seasons 1 and 2 of the original series, it was hiring real science fiction writers. It was hiring people who were actually going to tell very deep and broad stories and the like. And the next generation actually kept up with that as well. That's what needs to be done now. The real sci-fi writers need to come in, really need to brainstorm, really need to come up with something cool, because there's a vast universe out there where we can boldly go where no one has gone before. That exists still because, hey, we haven't even gotten past the Milky Way galaxy yet, have we? There's a lot out there, and there's a lot new things that we can actually get into and just kind of start fresh and feel like it's fresh from this deal. So you look at Stargate, for example. Stargate is another one that's going to be rebooting with a next generation sort of setup, and I think that's a good way to do it. I don't think a complete reboot where it's like redoing characters is a good idea. I don't think a wait needs to happen or anything like that. I think that people are at this point just hoping a real Star Trek comes out because we've missed it, and it hasn't been around for a long, long time. So what we've got right now is Strange New World Season 4 going to be dropping in 2 months, and that's going to be a travesty. You can tell from the previews that it's just another parody of Star Trek that's not Star Trek. We have a puppet episode with skin Star Trek. We have a Jurassic Park episode skin Star Trek. We have a horror episode skin Star Trek. They're doing the same thing as Season 3, where they don't know how to make Star Trek, so they're going to make something else that they do know how to make and then put Star Trek on top of it, and it's just going to be a disaster, and that's not going to appease fans whatsoever. We have Starfleet Academy Season 2 that's going to come out, and then Strange New World's wrapping up. That's going to feel like one season again because there's not a lot of content there. We're talking a total of 26 episodes, and it's gone. We do have the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves kind of doing that reboot start to actually reset the universe with a feature film. And I think wherever that goes, that's a very important marker for like where this goes, and Paramount needs to take really, really good care of that to do so. But I look forward to that. I hope that happens, and I hope a TV show spins out of that actually does go explore Strange New Worlds. I hope Star Trek United happens. I hope Michael Sussman and Scott Bakula can actually do that sort of political drama that faces off way back at the birth of the Federation, because I think that's a lot of fun too. If those two things go forward, and if they're done right, if they don't push the diversity buttons and try to make everything gay all the time, I think Star Trek fans will be very, very happy with where things go. So no, it doesn't need a reset. Now, Star Wars, I think it does need a break, and I don't even know where they could even go. I mean, honestly, I've, like I said, I attempted to rewrite Star Trek and actually make it and actually build my pitch for it. And I showed you in 2 different ways how to do that. I've done it with Doctor Who as well. I think those are easy to fix. Star Wars, I don't know about that. I have a pitch, but I'm a shakier on it than I would be with these ones because, gosh, they really have messed up that brand a lot more, perhaps. Leave a comment down below with what you think about this. Do you want a break for Star Trek, or do you want real Star Trek to actually come back? Please hit the like and subscribe button. In the meantime, check this out. This is closer to real Star Trek than anything I think they've put out in years, and I think you're going to love it. It's in the description below. We'll be back soon.